So welcome back to Mad Rose Woodworks. Now I'm going to cover what's been going on with this table and leg build. This is mostly the leg and apron build, but I wanted to touch on some aspects of this that didn't go so well. So as you can see here, I'm doing the frog tape, the green painter's tape, because I've heard pretty good things about it as far as for a painter's tape, that it's no bleed, sticks fairly well till you want to remove it, all that good stuff. And I've seen other videos where they have used blue painter's tape fairly successfully. Well, here's me working with the I taped up the top. I had several knots on the dining room table and the coffee table also that went all the way through. And I obviously want to fill those with epoxy. And that's what I did. I covered all the gaps, even on the legs. I covered any cracks with the tape to keep the epoxy from leaking out. Well, that, as you'll see later on, didn't go so well. Did not go as planned. And again, I was very diligent about hitting all the cracks, all the knots. I covered all the pieces between the legs and the aprons. This hickory had a lot of rough spots on it, which some held up better than others. I figured I've worked with epoxies before. Nothing like this super clear epoxy. Nothing this watery. I've worked with 5-minute epoxies, 30-minute epoxies. I think maybe a 60-minute epoxy. But that was years, 15, 20 years ago. That was a long time ago when I was flying model airplanes. But anyhow, I digress. Here I am mixing up the super clear epoxy, the two parts resin to 1 part hardener. And it's a very easy product to mix, very easy product to use. I like the product. It flows very well. And I picked up I don't even know what the brand was. It's in the thumbnail. A black powder resin epoxy coloring. And the color is great. It worked well. I just had a little 1/8 of a teaspoon, I believe, that I dumped in there. And stirred it up for the appropriate time. Several minutes to get a good solid mix to it. And I didn't have any issues with that. That all worked out well. And you'll see here, there's nice watery consistency. This stuff it's the deep pour epoxy. So it is a true 72 hours for full cure. It definitely 3 days. I was hoping it would go a little quicker, maybe 48 hours, but it's a solid 72. And this is the process. I just slowly filled all the small knots and small cracks. A lot of these didn't go through, and they did fairly well. Some of them had larger voids and cracks in them, so they did suck up the epoxy pretty well. I had to top a couple of them off. And I probably should have brushed it in a little bit, maybe to give it a little better adhesion to the sides. Like this one here. I fill them up till they just bubble over just a little bit. And looking back, I probably should have built a little bit of a dam around them because, yes, they did bleed over, spill over the edges pretty good. Here's one of this one I believe went through. You'll see I filled this spot here and then the knot, part of that knot behind it. And you'll see it actually took a decent amount. You'll see it sink down there. And here is the failure. You can see where it oozes over the side, but this is where the green painter's tape doesn't work. You see how it is bleeding underneath the tape? And here, it just bled through the tape, out the seam, and just leaked everything out all over the saw table. But the melamine top, really, it was easy to get the epoxy off. But you'll see what I'm talking about here. It just all drained out. And these were fairly big knots. Wasn't too excited to see that. But on the plus side, now that it had cured through the tape, it was definitely solid, filled up to where I don't have to worry about the cracks anymore. But I did go back and actually use Tyvek tape to take care of that issue. Now here we're jumping quickly ahead. I know I'm all over the place here, but this is a little jig I set up on the side of my assembly table. I have the just a clamp that I hold it in place, and my doweling jig that I picked up. I'm just lining up the side of it with the side of the apron, tighten it down, and then I will take my drill with my 3/8 bit and a stop block that I made. Is a piece of scrap plywood. Wasn't sure if that would hold up as opposed to maybe a piece of hardwood, but so far with all the dowel holes I drilled on the apron for the coffee table, it held up just fine. We'll see if it holds up with the dining room table. And here I'm doing multiple attempts, multiple passes to clear the chips out. But I found after this that I could just do it all in one shot. The bit's pretty sharp. And then I got that hole drilled. Loosen it up, flip it around, and again line up the other side with the edge of the doweling jig. Tighten it down, grab the drill with the stop on it, and run it down. Again, I didn't need to do this 3-4 times. It worked just fine with one pass. And then I took it off and blew out the chips and did a quick test fit with the dowel pins that I had picked up. And I did have some issues, you'll see later on, with some of them are really tight and some of them fit really well. I'm sure it's a manufacturing issue. But this is just a quick run through of the jig that I made. It's just a couple pieces of plywood screwed together at a 90 and clamped down to the bench. And I have these cutoffs that were 1/2 inch thick. I didn't want to measure everything down to the fraction of the inch. So I just built this jig / template of sorts to just drop these spacers in to give my apron a 1/2 inch offset from the face of the legs. I found that to be the easiest and quickest way to do it. I didn't feel it was necessary to measure everything again down to the fraction of the inch. This is repeatable on all 4 sides, and actually for all of the aprons for both the dining room table and the coffee table. And then what I'm doing here, I picked up dowel pin centers, and these just drop right into the dowel holes, and I place my apron up against those spacers, hold it tight against there, and I just slide my leg right up against those pins, put a little bit of pressure on them, and it leaves 2 little imprints, 2 little divots from the sharp point that's on the pins, the center pins. And then I'll just take my scratch awl and just give it a little tap so I have a good center to hit with the drill bit when I throw it in the drill press later on. And these dowel pins are nice. The locating pins are nice because you can actually take the larger size and it slides right over the wood dowel itself. And you can also use that to mark your dowel positions. But this is me explaining how I marked all of my corners of each apron and each leg with numbers 1 through 8, so that way I knew exactly, in case there was a little bit of variation with my apron thickness or the position of the dowel holes, which shouldn't be the way I lined everything up. But it definitely made assembly much easier when it came time to put everything together. Now onto the drill press. Pretty straightforward here. It's if you've got a drill press, it makes life much easier, being able to drill perfectly straight perpendicular holes. It makes assembly again much easier. You can still do it with a handheld drill. Just have to be very cognizant and aware of how straight and perpendicular your holes are to your workpiece. Because if they're on a severe angle, there's not much wiggle room when it comes to these dowel pins. And yeah, just drill them on both sides, and it did all four legs at once, seeing as I had marked everything prior to bringing everything over to the drill press. Trying to get everything done quickly together and batched out so you can do everything at once and keep the wasted time running around the shop down to a minimum. And here we are, back to the glue up. This was an interesting one. I had initially thought about using the ratchet strap to draw my sides together. I was going to glue everything up and use the strap and just suck everything together. And this is where I realized there were a few issues with these dowel pins in particular. These are generic dowel pins from Home Depot. General, I think, is the name of the brand. And what I found, I don't know if it was my drilled holes, which I don't think. I'll have to go back and measure some of these. But some of these pins were actually oversized. And I realized that when I was beating them in with my mallet and actually split one of the boards. Now, there may have been an issue with me filling the hole partially with glue and getting a what do they call it, a hydraulic lock. The flutes on the pins are supposed to help prevent that, but basically what it is the glue, being a fluid, won't compress when you force the pin in there, and if it can't escape through the flutes on the pin, it's got to go somewhere. So I don't know if it was the force of the glue or the dowel pins being oversized, but like I said, I did have a couple splits on one of the aprons, but I was able to fix them. And this here is the interesting part. This is where I realized where it's not going to go together as easily as I thought. So I stood it up on end, started to wiggle it back and forth and put some pretty good force behind it. And that's when I realized this probably isn't going to work as easily as I wanted it to. Here's me still trying to figure out, yep, strap's probably not going to work. I haven't quite dawned out. Wait, there he is. Now he figured it out. Because I wanted to do it all in one glue up, so I was ready to go. But I realized it wasn't going to happen. So we break out the pipe clamps. And what I'm doing now is just throwing them on 2 sets on each one here. Make sure I get a perfect 90-degree angle between the apron and the leg. Wipe off some of the glue. Didn't wipe off nearly enough, so I spent a lot of time scraping with a chisel and my sander. But here's me just double checking, make sure I don't have it tweaked one way or the other. So needless to say, I had to do 2 separate glue ups. Now here, about 4 or 5 hours later, here is the second glue up. And now I can put together both sets of legs. And again, having everything marked made life a lot easier for me. And here we go, wiping off some excess glue, filling the holes, putting the pins in. Then we're going to lay it over on this side. And that again was, I was hoping the strap would simplify this and make it a one-step process, but it did not. But fortunately with the pipe clamps, I love these things. It makes life a lot easier. They're fairly cheap, and you can make them more or less any length you need. Either buy the pipes in pre-cut lengths or buy 10-foot sticks and have Home Depot cut them down to whatever size you need. So I got a couple 10-footers, had them cut them down to 5-foot pieces, and it gave me plenty for both of these tables, both of the coffee table and the dining table. There you go. Okay, well that's pretty much it for this portion of the build. I have yet to put the legs and apron together for the dining room table. That is a 3x6 table. This is a 3x3 coffee table. The dining room table is 3x6. Same procedure, same apron, dowels, the whole deal. Nothing different there. I'm just waiting for epoxy to cure. I had some splits and knots on the legs and the aprons I wanted to fill. Trying my first time with the deep pour epoxy. It's 3 days for full cure, so it's a waiting process in between each portion, which is why I will be jumping forward to probably finishing. I think I'll go to next. I'll probably do all the assembly, which is just a matter of recessing figure eights on the top of the apron, placing the top and screwing it in. I mean, there's really not much to the rest of this process. So that being said, that's about it. Hope you liked the video. Be sure to follow and subscribe. Hit the bell because I, again, will be having the finishing of these 2 pieces of furniture. I will be using Rubio Monocoat, a walnut finish. I'm sure you've seen a lot of the clear finish, the natural Rubio finish. This is going to be the walnut because this is what the client requested, and I'm curious to see how it turns out. So that being said, thanks for tuning in. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will see you on the next one.